On this episode of Ask the Experts, sitting here with Jonathan Hess from Hess Financial Coaching. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Doing well.
Excellent. So tell me, tell me a little bit about your business, financial coaching. What is that all about?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and a lot of people tend to think, oh, you're a financial advisor, right? Well, it's similar, but I'm more focused on kind of helping people build the foundational aspects of their personal financial life. So laying the groundwork for, to allow them to, make better decisions in the future. And, it's an area where it doesn't matter what your career is, if you're a school teacher, first responder, factory worker, doctor, lawyer, everyone deals with money.
Right, of
And
course.
developing those good money habits, especially early on, is so important to, having a successful life down the road. So, um, you know, obviously the end goal is to, whatever the client has in mind. I mean, it's their money. They have dreams and goals that they want to achieve, and I'm, still there to help them achieve those. But there are different ways of getting there, and some people, tons of people have debt. I mean, that's one of the kind of the most common things that I see. But there are ways that you can pay off that debt more efficiently, more effectively. Sometimes it's a matter of paying, high interest at first versus, trying to get some of the smaller ones out of the way to get a mental win. But it's really, teaching people how to budget effectively, save properly, and really, kind of build that foundational level to be able to achieve some of those longer term goals.
Wow. So it sounds like you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So tell me, as a financial coach, what do you do to what do you do to onboard a client? Like, what are the first things that you're looking for?
Yeah. So clients that meet with me will typically fill out a kind of a questionnaire and a kind of a rough budget, and give me highlights of what their current financial picture is. But the first thing that we'll start with is, okay, what do you want to achieve? Like I said, this is, it's their money, and I want them to be completely self-sufficient to being able to achieve whatever goals that they have. So if it's, we want to buy a house in 3 years, okay, let's figure out, based on where you stand now, based on income, expenses, current debt levels. One, is it smart to buy a house in that time horizon? Are there other things that we need to think about first? But two, how can we get there fastest, but also most responsibly?
Hmm. That's good advice, because I mean um, you know we all have hopes and dreams and
Yeah.
goals, but sometimes we want to achieve those a little faster than we possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think as a financial coach, it's probably a good thing for you to be able to be realistic with how much time it's going to take to actually get those goals.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
now you were mentioning buying a home. Um, I've always said that buying a home has to be, or should be, probably the very first large purchase, and usually is the largest
Hmm.
purchase a
Yeah.
family ever makes. But of course, if they have debt, perhaps student loans or high interest debt, I mean, these things can be a problem when it comes time to apply for a mortgage.
Yeah.
So I can certainly see how you might want to have a plan put together, so that folks can just follow along with. Now,
Hmm.
do you in your financial coaching experience, do you find that some clients hesitate? For instance, um, you might see a client recently bought a new car. They have a
Hmm.
new, beautiful German car in the driveway of their rented apartment.
Yeah.
and their goal is, well, let's say, to buy a home. What do you do?
So that's it's a tricky one. We would like to call that, car rich, house poor,
Mhm.
which is, for some people that's perfectly fine. It's if that's the lifestyle they want to live. But when you are spending money on rent that's not building equity,
Mhm.
and a large portion of your paycheck is going to a heavily depreciable asset, um, typically over the long run, those two don't really mix well. Now, renting is not always, I mean, a lot of people say renting is, oh, just throwing money away. There are a lot of costs that you save by renting. I'm a homeowner. There's more to it than just the money for me. I like being able to throw a movie on in the living room at, max volume and not having my neighbors complain
Yeah.
above me.
Yeah.
That, there's, and that kind of goes to something that I always preach is that every decision with money is not black and white. There is human emotion involved in every single decision, and, you know, human emotion involved in that, purchase of that nice, BMW or Audi.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's understandable because of, partially because of the society we live in. It's keeping up with the Joneses,
Mm.
and always wanting to improve and have that have that next best thing. But there are still ways to work with that kind of person. If they want to buy a house, there is a certain level of black and white order that we can kind of work through in terms of priorities. Okay, well, probably need to either get that car paid off pretty quickly, or potentially sell it and buying something more reasonable if home ownership is really what their goal is, because that's going to eat at a chunk of not only their income for the month, but it's also going to be included in the debt to income ratios that
Mm.
lenders calculate in order to even approve you for a loan.
Sure.
But there is a black and white, kind of order of operations for what should be done first, what should be done second, and a lot of those are, have mathematical reasons behind it. So whether it's emergency fund first, contributing to a retirement account to achieve your employer's match, paying off high interest debt. There are things that you should do before others, just because there are not only mathematical reasons too, but from a logic standpoint, some things make sense to do before others.
Absolutely. You touched on an emergency fund. My own views of how much to have in an emergency fund this year has changed dramatically.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
dramatically. Now, I've been retired for 7 years, but almost all of my money is invested. More than
Hmm.
99%. Um, However, until the spring of last year, I kept, oh, 3 to 4 months of needs and wants expenses
Hmm.
in savings. And yeah, after going through March and April, I mean, that was pretty freaky.
Yeah.
I've never saw so much money being wiped off. Paper money, at least. I mean, just on paper, because didn't sell anything, but
Yeah.
it was shocking what the portfolio values looked like, on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Um, so now, if anybody asks me, I'm saying, you got to have at least 6 months of your normal budget, whatever it is, in savings. And I would go as far as to say as 12 months of needs, just to
Yeah.
keep things going. I would have, and I mean, I would bet the farm. I mean, I was always, completely the opposite from conservative. It's just, 3 months, I was perfectly fine with that. And how I built up the savings was just, or my emergency fund was just through natural savings,
Hmm.
through March, April, May. Now I live in Italy. We had the harshest lockdown
Yeah.
outside of China, anywhere.
Hmm.
So, I mean, essentially, we were literally kept in our homes unless we
Yeah.
had to go to the doctor or the food store, and that was it. You
Right.
couldn't even go to work. Like they shut down everything. Like you couldn't
Yeah.
even go to work. So so yeah, I mean, I saved so much money, and I've just kept that money, and that was it. As for
Yeah.
renting, um, I get it. Your idea. Well, you like your autonomy, and you like the idea of
Hmm.
putting on a movie at midnight. I think you get that if you're in a detached home,
Yeah. Yes.
because you can rent a detached home, I
Yes, it's
guess,
true.
right?
Yeah, that's true.
Um, I but you mentioned the building equity, and I think that that's an incredibly important thing. Even if the value of the home doesn't go up, which it does, but even if it doesn't go up, I mean, it's a kind of a forced savings
Yep.
that is available to everyone, right? It's a
Right.
safe thing. You can live in it, just continue paying it, but
Hmm.
not having too much of a mortgage is also important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there are certain rules of thumb you can follow, to kind of figure out, okay, this is what, kind of house I want. This is what my monthly payment would be.
Mhm.
And then, kind of, I typically tell people, the rule of thumb is you usually don't want your mortgage or rent payment to be above 30% of your take home pay. Um, for some areas, that's much harder than others. I mean, it might be hard to tell someone in, downtown San Francisco that
I was thinking the same
that's a
thing.
rule.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so it varies. And here
yeah.
in Houston, it's, you can get a lot for that 30%. So it varies by location and that. And yeah, on your comment about the emergency funds, yeah, it's 3 to 6 months was always the kind of the rule of thumb. And I think it varies based on your career. If you have, my wife and I are both salaried employees at our full-time jobs, and um, we're in relatively safe and highly competitive industries in our area. So the level of risk of not being able to find a new job in the event that we're either let go or something happens, is not quite as high as if you were in, let's say, a commission based
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
So for those types of jobs, or for jobs with a lot of turnover, 6 months I think is the minimum.
Mhm.
And anything up to 6 months, and like you said, we saw this year, sometimes 6 months that's not enough.
Right.
um, and so, but I think once you get to that 12-month mark, at that point, if you continue saving in a, even a high yield savings account that's getting 0.5% right now, you're kind of losing out on, potential gains that you could get in the market at that point.
Right. And so touching on that, when you're speaking with clients, do you provide any advice as to what they should be investing in?
No, so I'm not a registered investment advisor. I can't
Mhm.
legally give that type of advice.
Mhm.
I can definitely help people decide, whether um, what percentage they should be
Mhm.
saving at a minimum for retirement if their plan allows it. And I've got a couple of calculators on my website that I've built in Excel that also work with Google Sheets, that we can look at some of the assumptions and say, okay, based on this level of contribution, this employer match, this level of income growth over time, assuming this rate of return, this is what your retirement balance could look like at retirement. So
Mhm.
like that usually helps people kind of get an idea around. And some people, they're contributing a few $100 a month, and they look at the age 65, and they've got over 1 million projected based on those numbers. That was like, oh
Right.
really? It's like, yeah, you just
So these guys are
because you,
young. These guys are very
yeah,
young, then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if you've got 30 years to work with, I mean,
Sure.
you've got, time is the greatest asset that
Mhm.
we have, and it's something that we, once you lose it, you can't get it back.
You're right.
So
You're right.
so start early and often.
Could you imagine if every baby was born today with $10,000 stuck in some index ETF or mutual fund or
Hmm.
something like that? Just keep it from zero, from age
Yeah,
zero. Can you imagine what the world would be like
yeah,
with 10K? I mean, 10K is nothing. I mean, in the grand scheme of
well,
things, it's nothing.
yeah. At that
Um,
point, it's just not making the bad decision to pull it out early.
Exactly. But I think everything would be paid for. Education would be paid for.
Hmm. Yeah.
Medical expenses for the most part would probably be taken care of, and retirement would probably happen around 50 or 55.
Yeah.
Probably with not much contribution after
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yep.
What a thought.
Yeah. Right.
Out out of curiosity, do you have any? I don't want any names, but do you have any standout clients where you worked with them for a period of time, where they were perhaps in a really rough situation, and over a period of time and working with you, they just flourished, they got it, they followed the program, and now they're doing really well.
Yeah. So I had one girl that I worked with who had student loans that um, she was making a little bit a little bit above the minimum payment on,
Mhm.
um, but sitting down with her and kind of showing, okay, look, the disposable income you have is actually enough to allow you to pay these loans off, which would have taken probably 7 or 8 years. This is going to allow you to pay it off in 5. Not only that, you're going to save 8 grand in interest.
Mhm.
And you know sometimes, yeah, and I know your question was more of like a longer term
No.
thing, but for some people, all it takes is just seeing the numbers. And to her credit, she was able to implement a change in her budget and spending habits, and was able to fix that. And you know she was well on her way to being able to pay all of those loans off early. And I think it's credit to her. I mean, I can show her the path to get there, but unless she takes the reins and actually implements it, then I
Yeah.
don't do any good.
Yeah, well, that's it. At the end of the day, that's there has to be action on somebody's part.
Um,
Um, there's yeah, it's just not going to work unless you make the changes.
yeah.
This has been great. I honestly had no idea what a financial coach does. Um, I thought, it sounds it's a lot more like an advisor, but without the investments.
Yeah.
Um,
Essentially.
Essentially, it's a lot of what the folks
Hmm.
read about actually on my blog, the Financially Independent
Yeah.
Millennial. Very much
Hmm.
the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
great.
I like to kind of, you go to a gym, sometimes you don't need a personal coach.
Mhm.
But sometimes you need that little bit of extra help and encouragement and direction in order to achieve those goals you have in the gym. It's the same thing for personal finance.
Yep. Yep. Great advice, Jonathan Hess. Thank you so much for meeting me with me today, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye now.